So I have other videos that have other questions on this worksheet explained. So we're just going to go over a couple of them in this class. And I've been doing this all day, so I've been recording what I've been explaining, different questions throughout the day. So we're going to begin with this first side. It's the side that says, write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through the given point and is parallel. So emphasize the word parallel. I'm highlighting it right here. I'm going to zoom in. And what does parallel mean? Parallel means same slope, same m value, okay? So they are giving you a point and they're telling you that this equation that they give you is going to be parallel, same slope as your equation, okay? So they give you a point and indirectly they give you a slope. Like if we were doing number 3, which we're not going to do right now, but if we were doing number 3, what slope is parallel to this equation? It'd be this exact slope, -3/4, because parallel means same slope. So you would take the information that your slope on your equation is going to be the same exact thing as this one. Make sense? Okay. And then you would have a point like x1, y1, and you could jump into point slope form or you could jump into slope intercept form. And we'll get to some of those examples, but if we go to, let's actually start with the easiest one, number 1, yeah? Let's do that. So they give us a point, which is 3, 2, which we could already label x, y, and you could call it 1, 1 because it's our only point. And they give us this equation that is in slope-intercept form. It's in y equals mx plus b. So the m is 1 over 1, or you could just say that the m is 1, right? And the bottom line is your equation is going to have the same exact slope as that equation. So our equation over here is going to have the same exact slope as that one. How do I know that? Because the instructions say that our equation is parallel, which means the same slope as this equation. And it also passes through this point. So what do we really have here? We have a point and we have a slope. So if you hear those words, you're going to think of point slope form. Okay. And what is point slope form? Point slope is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. And whenever you use point slope form, I recommend you rewrite it the way I did right here. Everything that's in black and leave the y1, the m, and the x1 blank because that's what we're going to plug in from the information that we have. We have a y1, we have an x1, we have an m. So right here where the y1 is at, I'm going to replace that with the number 2 because that's the y1 value. So we're going to plug in a number 2 right there. I'm going to take the m value of 1. How did I get the m value? Because they told me it was parallel to this one. So the m value of 1, I'm going to put it right here. And the x1 value of 3, I'm going to put that right there where the x1 is at. So we're going to put a 3 right there. Now this is the equation of the line that passes through the point 3, 2 and has a slope 1. This is in point slope form. If the instructions would have said, write your equation in point slope form, I would be done right here. There's nothing else to do. But it does say slope intercept form, okay? So they want us to make it look like this, y equals mx plus b. They want us to make it look like that. So obviously you want y by itself, but even before that, you want to get rid of these parentheses because y equals mx plus b does not have parentheses. So you want to get rid of the parentheses. And it's really easy to get rid of parentheses, especially in this problem because there's a 1 right here that you need to distribute, which is really just like not changing anything, right? So whatever number you have right here, to get rid of the parentheses, all you have to do is distribute. And we all know that 1 times x is x and 1 times 3 or -3 is -3. Bring down the equal sign, bring down y minus 2. All you have to do is get rid of the minus 2 to get y by itself by doing plus 2 and plus 2. And you're going to end up with y equals x minus 1. That's your slope-intercept form equation. That is the answer to this first question. They said write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through this point and is parallel to this one. This is it. This, if I were to graph this by going to the y-axis and putting a dot at -1 and rising and running 1, up 1 over 1, I would eventually cross through the point 3, 2. And if I graph this one, both of these lines would be parallel. So once again, what did I do? Bless you. They indirectly told us that we had the slope of 1, and they gave us a point. So if I know I have a slope and a point, I'm going to plug in my point and my slope into point slope form. Okay. And when I plug it into point slope form, from there, I change it to the slope intercept form that they wanted. So that's one way of doing it. Do you get it? Okay. So let's say you're like, man, I don't like point slope form. All right. So you could kind of just stick, actually, let me make this line in black. You could just stick with this and not mess with this at all. I prefer doing point slope form. When I have a point and I have a slope, I like to use a point slope and just plug it in and change it. But if you don't like point slope, maybe you're not like me, you don't like point slope, you only like slope intercept, you could actually plug in the m value of 1 right there where the m is at. Okay, so I'm going to take this 1 and I'm going to plug it in right there where the m is at and recognize that it is being multiplied by x. So I'm going to put a multiplication dot and I'm going to put a parenthesis so I could actually plug in my x value. Where am I going to get an x value from? From the 3, because the 3 is an x value. So the 3 goes right there. So I plug in the 3 right in there. And I also have the equal sign that comes down right here. And I also have a y value. Where am I going to get a y value from? From this y value of 2. So you could plug in the 2 right there. And you're going to have 2 equals 1 times 3. 2 equals 1 times 3 and then plus b. So we need to write the plus b also, because we don't know what b is. You see, by us plugging the y in right there, the m in right there, and the x in right there, we end up with an equation that has a bunch of numbers and math operations and a single variable b, which means that I could solve for b. So 1 times 3 is 3, and you still have the plus b, you still have the equal sign, you still have the 2, and now you could actually solve for b by getting rid of this 3 by simply subtracting 3 and subtracting 3, getting an answer -1 equals b, right? Because these guys canceled out. So you have -1 equals b, which means that b equals -1. So if you know your m and you know your b, then you could just simply write it in y equals mx plus b. So there's your equation, y equals 1x minus 1, which is the same thing as what we got over here, but we did it 2 different ways. Okay, so if you're thinking, what the heck, that's too much work, I'm not going to do all this work. That's right, you're not going to do all this work. I just did this problem 2 times in different ways. So whenever you identify the slope and you know it's parallel to the one that we want to write, so that's going to be your slope, and they give you a point, you could do what I like to do, go with point slope form, plug it in, do the math, change it to y by itself, then it's in slope intercept. Or if you don't like point slope form, you could just write down your y equals mx plus b, plug in your x, plug in your y, and then plug in your m, solve for b, and then you have your m and your b, which means you could plug it into the m and to the b, and you have your y equals mx plus b equation. Whichever way you feel better, that's the way you're supposed to do, right? Now, not all of them are going to be as easy as looking at an equation and it's already in slope-intercept form, and you could find the slope right off the bat just by looking at it, right? Some of them are a little more challenging. For example, all of those are easy. But like number 6, for example, again, the instructions are your line passes through this point, which is an x value and a y value, and it is parallel, which means same slope. It has the same slope as this equation right here. But the problem is you can't see the m value of that equation because that's in standard form, right? So you have to change the way it looks so you could actually see an m. So right here it says ax plus by equals c. There is no m involved right there. But if you get y by itself, then it'll be y equals mx plus b. Then you'll be able to identify the slope, which means that you're going to have the same slope as that one. So what to do here is to get y by itself, subtract 2x, subtract 2x. You're going to have y equals -2x plus 5. And now you could see that the slope is -2. So this equation, all you care about is finding that slope. Why? Because the instructions say that our line is parallel to this line, which means that if our line's parallel to this line, our line's going to have the same exact slope as that one. So I could write down our slope is going to be -2. All I need is a b value, and then I could plug it all into y equals mx plus b. So you have the option of going with y equals mx plus b, Or you have the option of going into point slope form, which is what I usually choose to do. I have a point, I have a slope, I plug it into y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. And I'm not going to work through this because this question's already explained on a different video, but at least I got you started and I let you see that not all the time are you going to be able to see the equation that's given. Like this equation is really easy. And they give it to you in slope-intercept form. You already know that the m is negative 3/4. That means that our m is going to be negative 3/4. Number two, you already know that the slope, the m is negative 4. So that means that our slope is going to be negative 4 because all of these on this first part of the worksheet say that they're parallel to our equation, which means same slope. Okay. But if you flip the paper over, that says perpendicular. The second half of this homework, it says write an equation in slope-intercept form, same thing, they want y equals mx plus b, of the line that passes through the given point and is perpendicular. So what does perpendicular mean? That means opposite reciprocal slopes. Opposite reciprocal slopes. Now you might be thinking, what the heck does that mean? Opposite reciprocal means that you change the sign, then flip the fraction. So whenever you see the slope of the equation that they give you, once you see that slope, you're going to change the sign and flip it to acquire your perpendicular slope. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And I want to go through a couple of these. Let's do number 17. And like I said, I'm only doing a couple of questions on each side of this worksheet. And if you want explanations to other ones, there's other videos that I've been recording throughout the day and other classes. So let's do number 17. Again, on this section, they tell us that our line is perpendicular. Our line is perpendicular to this line. What does perpendicular mean? That whatever slope this has, our slope is going to be an opposite reciprocal slope. Okay. Now the thing is, I can't see the slope here because this is in standard form. Ax plus by equals c. There is no m involved. So I first need to start by getting y by itself. So I'm going to subtract x. Let me zoom in a bit here. And then I'm going to rewrite this thing. It's a negative 6y equaling a negative x with a plus 2. Final step to get rid of that negative 6, that multiplication of negative 6 in front of y, would be to divide everything by negative 6. And there's an invisible 1 in between the negative and the x, so there's a negative 1x right there. So when we divide, we end up with, that cancels out, y all by itself, y equals a negative divided by a negative is a positive, 1/6x, and then 2 over negative 6, a positive divided by a negative is a negative. 2 you can't divide by 6, but that fraction 2/6 could be reduced by 2, and it'll become 1/3. So all I did was take the original equation that they gave us, and I changed it to slope-intercept form. Why did I do that? So I could identify its m value. What's the m value? 1/6, okay? Why do I want that m value of that equation that they gave us? Because on the instructions, it says that our line is perpendicular to this line. Now, if our line is perpendicular to this line, that means that you're going to change the sign and flip the fraction. So what is our slope going to be? What's our slope? Negative 6 over 1, which you could just say negative 6, right? Negative 6 over 1 is just negative 6. And that's a beautiful thing right there, having a nice number like that. So what do we have now? We have a slope and we have a point. So what I like to do, it doesn't mean that you have to do this, but what I like to do, if I have a point and a slope, which I do, I like to go for point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. Let me repeat that, but write blank spots. Y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1 close parenthesis. That way you could plug in the y1 value right here is 4. Plug in that 4 where the y1 is at. So we put a 4 right there. And we take the m value that we got, understanding that it's the opposite reciprocal slope of that one. So we take that m value and plug it in right here where the m is at, the slope, -6. And then we have the y value of 1. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the x value of 2. That belongs right there in the x1 spot. Put a 2 right there. And this is our equation in point-slope form. If they said on the instructions, write the equation in point-slope form, we would be done right there. But they say slope-intercept. We know slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b. And obviously, y is by itself right here. Y is not by itself. But more importantly, there's no parentheses anywhere on this side. So we don't want these parentheses. And to get rid of those parentheses, we distribute. So we're going to distribute that -6. -6 times x is a -6x. -6 times -2 is a +12. What do I have left? An equal sign and a y minus 4 over here. All I need to do to get y equals mx plus b form is to get y by itself now. Because there's no more parentheses, all I got to do is get rid of that -4 by adding 4 to both sides. So +4 here and +4 over there. We now have y equals mx plus b, 16. So y equals -6x plus 16 is our slope-intercept form equation. That is the answer to question 17 on the worksheet. Now, I did that because once I found my slope and I realized that I have a point and a slope, I went for point-slope form. You didn't have to go that route if you don't want to. If you don't like point-slope form, you could ignore what I just did and focus in on y equals mx plus b. What is y in the information that we have right now? What is y? 4. So you plug in 4 right there. So if we put a 4 instead of y, because I took the 4, put it right there where the y is at, and I have an equal sign, and then I take the m, -6, and I plug in that -6 right there where the m's at, and notice that it does have mx, which means m times x. So I better put a multiplication dot or some parentheses there so I could plug in my x value of 2 right there where the x is at. So put a 2 right there in parentheses. That way you remember that you're multiplying. And then you still have the plus b at the very end. So let's put plus b at the very end. So again, this is an alternate way of doing it. All you got to do is solve this equation by doing the math. Of course, -6 times 2, that's -12. You still have a plus b. You still have an equal sign. You still have a 4. You want to get b by itself. You don't want this -12. So you're going to get rid of it by doing the opposite. Plus 12. What you do to one side, you do to the other side to maintain the equality of the equation. 4 plus 12 is 16. 16 equals b. b equals 16. So we had the m up here. M is -6. Now we have the b, which is 16. So if you have your m and you have your b, you could now write it in y equals mx plus b form. Again, y equals m is -6, x plus b, that's plus 16. Notice it's the same exact equation as this one. We just did it 2 different ways. So again, you choose the best option for you. If you only want to stick with y equals mx plus b, totally fine. Plug in your y, plug in your x, plug in your m, solve for b. Once you have an m and a b, you could write it in slope-intercept form. Or you could take your standard form equation, change it to get y equals, actually, no, yeah, well, either way you're going to have to do this. But for the point-slope form is once you have the slope and you have a point, plug it into point-slope, change it to slope-intercept, you're going to get the same answer. I don't know, guys. Should we do more? Anybody want to see any other one? Yes, please. All right, we'll do one more, even though I don't want to. You guys are dying for it, right? Let's do number 20. So they tell us that our line is perpendicular to this line. What is this slope? I don't know. We need to get that in slope-intercept form first to identify the slope. So what do I do to get y by itself? So we're going to subtract 5x. Subtract 5x. We're going to rewrite this thing. 4y equals -5x plus 8. Now I need to get rid of the multiplication of 4 in front of the y. What do I do? That is correct. We're going to divide by 4. And we're going to divide everything by 4. Divide this by 4, and that by 4. It's going to give us y equals negative 5 over 4, x plus 8 over 4, that's 2. And the whole purpose of taking this standard form equation and changing it to slope-intercept form is to be able to identify its slope, which is negative 5/4. Now, because the instructions say that our line is perpendicular to that line, that must mean that our slope is what? Anybody? M equals what? If it's perpendicular to that slope. Okay, so you're going to change the sign and flip the fraction, positive 4 over 5, right? Okay, so we have a slope, 4 over 5, and we also have a point, x1, y1. So again, for me, I like to go with point slope form. And when you use point slope form, rewrite it with blank spots, y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. I do that all the time. I recommend you do it all the time as well. Now we're going to plug in our y1 value of 5 right there. We're going to plug in our m value of 4/5 right there. Again, m is 4/5. And we're going to plug in our x1 value of 10 right there. Now that is our answer in point slope form, but they want it in slope intercept form, and slope intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And obviously y is by itself. More importantly, it has no parentheses over here. So we're going to get rid of these parentheses by distributing the 4/5. And then we're going to get rid of the number by doing the opposite, moving it to the other side. So if you had a really ugly fraction right here, like let's say 2/7, then it might be a good idea to multiply everything by the denominator. That way you don't have to distribute a nasty fraction. But technically 4/5, that's actually pretty nice because the division of 5 works with 10. 10 is divisible by 5. So you could distribute the 4/5. I mean, you could get rid of the fraction. That way you only distribute a 4. But actually the 4/5 works fine because 10 is divisible by 5. So I'm going to distribute that 4/5. 4/5 times x is 4/5 x. 4/5 times negative 10, you could put that negative 10 over 1, and you could multiply top with the top. That'll be 40. So let me write over here, 40. And then bottom with the bottom, 5 times 1 is 5. And 40 divided by 5 is 8. So you're really going to have an 8 right here with a minus sign between it. You have an equal sign here, a y minus 5 over here. So you have y minus 5 equals 4/5 x minus 8. So to get y by itself, the final step would be to add 5 here to get rid of that minus 5. Add 5 over here. Your slope-intercept form equation will be y equals 4/5 x minus 3. There's your answer to this problem. Now, let's say you don't want to mess with point slope form. Let's say you only want to stick with slope-intercept form. Then plug in your x right there, your y right there, your m right there, and solve for b. That way you could find out what b actually equals. And once you have m and b, you could write it. Now, we already know that the b is going to be -3. But let's pretend that you don't see anything on the right side of that squiggly line, right? So you're going to plug in the y right there. That's a 5. The equal sign. You're going to plug in the m of 4/5 right there. 4/5. You're going to plug in the x value of 10 right there. So you're going to plug in a 10 right here. And you should put it in parentheses to remind you that you're multiplying. And then you have a plus b at the very end. So you are multiplying. How do you multiply a fraction with a number? You simply put that number over 1 and multiply top with top, bottom with bottom. Or you could cancel, then multiply. I'm just going to multiply. 4 times 10 is 40. 5 times 1 on the bottom is 5. You still have the plus b. You still have the equal sign on the 5. 40 divided by 5 is actually 8. So you have 5 equals 8 plus b. To get b by itself, you subtract 8, subtract 8. You're going to end up with b equaling -3. b equals -3. So if you have the m and now you have the b, you could easily write in y equals mx plus b. Now instead of the plus -3, you could have just written -3. And there's your answer. It's the same one that we got over here, just done completely differently. So I'm done with this video. There are other videos explaining other questions. I want you to work on this worksheet for the rest of the class. Please ask me for help. That's the only way to learn this stuff, to practice it on your own. And if over the weekend you're still working on it and I'm not there to help you, the videos will be on Google Classroom.